Well, good morning. I'm really excited to be here this morning. I've been where all of you are many times as a fan of Creative Mornings. And obviously, it's kind of weird to be able to be in a space where there aren't people and that we're not all hanging out together. But I'm hoping this morning to just share a little bit with you about myself and why I do what I do. And part of that is by me telling my story just a little bit. As Jeff referenced, I clearly am not a farmer, although I do like to wear plaid, but I think that's more of a Paul Bunyan, Minnesota, North Dakota thing than it is about farming. But I really, I did. I was born on a farm and made that transit off of the farm into city life, or at least if Bismarck is a city, right? And then was able to live in other parts of the country, and as Jeff referenced, am back here in Fargo in what I call my second life. So this morning, our theme is transit, and I want to share an image with you this morning. It's one of the most beautiful images in the world. It is the Chicago Transit Authority Rail L system map. Isn't that beautiful? It is one of my favorite images in the world. For me, it is a symbol of community. It is an emblem of design. And for me personally, it's a little bit of a North Star. So on one Monday, several years ago, I found myself sitting on a train on the L, on the red line, as you can see there running from north to south. I found myself riding the red line one Monday morning, and I was looking up at these beautiful ribbons of color that you see before you. And I was sitting there. Not 24 hours before, I was here in Fargo putting all of my belongings into a storage unit, other than what I could fit into my Nissan Maxima, and I had driven to Chicago with no real plan, particularly no place to live other than a friend's couch. And that Monday morning, I found myself looking at these ribbons. I had no idea what was gonna happen next. I had spent years of my life unhappy, pissed at myself and everybody else around me, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was so angry, and I was just sort of burnt out. I was a burnt out shell of who I thought I was. So to sort of give the backstory, what led me to that point, I had spent most of my professional life up to that point as a Christian pastor. I had a really good education experience, first starting at Dakota Wesleyan University in Mitchell, South Dakota, followed by a master's degree at Duke University. And I had positive performance reviews at every place that I worked. I was a leader in the larger church on committees. I was what some people might call a rising star. And at the same time, I rarely woke up or went to bed feeling content or feeling like I had a lot of purpose. Over time, I lost my ability to care. I lost my ability to create. I lost my ability to do a lot of things. Part of being a pastor is to create experiences for people, to inspire, to be able to have people find purpose and meaning in life. And yet, I had no wisdom. I had no creativity. I was a desert. Sometimes I say that I was just a burnt piece of toast. And everything that I needed to do my job was gone and dry. And so I decided that it was in time for me to take a sabbatical, maybe to figure out what I should do with my life in the church. And so I decided to take some time off, hence riding on the red line on a Monday morning, not sure what was next. So this sabbatical was really important to me. I wanted to change my narrative, and I also wanted to educate myself and change a little bit about how I saw the world. And so what I did was I just changed scenery, obviously, moved to a different place, and I decided to immerse myself in learning. I wanted to learn about community organizing, and I wanted to learn about community building, because I figured that that would probably help me figure out what was next for me in the church, but also in life, and to maybe restore who I once was once upon a time. And so I even volunteered at a very progressive church. It was a new church start, and they were doing innovative things, and I helped them actually start another campus in another part of the community. And all of this was my learning and kind of even learning about what's called church planting, starting new churches. And so I really immersed myself in all of these different things. I was desperate to save my life and my career and to be able to stay in the church. I was fighting a losing battle, by the way, and so we'll get back to that in a minute. So I fell in love with mass transit. I absolutely fell in love with mass transit. I mean, how could you not? Standing on the platform on a cold Chicago morning, that beautiful, sleek train rolling in with some sort of unaudible or not understandable message coming over from the conductor over the loud system, getting on this beautiful piece of equipment. Okay, not always beautiful. Sometimes they're old buckets of rust. But to get on that beautiful train and to be able to go anywhere in one of the most magnificent cities in the world. I don't know how many of you have been to Chicago, but between museums and restaurants and bars and nightlife and you name it, it's a magnificent city. It's a beautiful city. And every part of the city was accessible to me for the low price of $80 a month for an unlimited rail pass. And so I spent my time traveling around the city. Some of it was for work, some of it was for recreation. Sometimes I just went exploring, and I immersed myself in my city. And for me, these colorful ribbons of this map, I said they're a symbol of community. I believe community is where you find yourself. It's how you find who you are. And so just a little factoid about the Red Line. It runs all the way from the Howard Station in the north, all the way down to the 95th Station at the very south end of Chicago, so it runs the length of the city. Basically, on any given day, the ridership of the Red Line is about just over the population of the Fargo-Moorhead Metro, riding on that train every day. And I rode the train connecting buses and whatever else I needed to do to explore that city. Like I said, work, recreation, everything. And I learned a lot about community and about myself by riding the rails. Now I'm gonna say that since we don't have all day, I wanted to just share a few points with you all this morning about what I learned. Number one, the world is bigger than you. When you ride the train every day, you very quickly learn that you're not the only person on the planet. And your experience is what you are gonna make of it. Public transit is a shared experience. When you take the L, you are now living part of your life in public. Whether you're drinking coffee, reading a book, whatever you're doing, you're now doing that in public. And so is everyone else. And you have that shared experience on that silver bullet, or sometimes that's silver turtle, depending on which train you're on and at what particular time of day. And so if you leave a mess, that mess becomes somebody else's mess. When somebody else leaves a mess before you get on, that mess becomes your mess. You learn that very quickly because for some reasons passing understanding, some trains have cloth seats, and when you sit down in a wet cloth seat in the morning because somebody else left something there for you, you have that first experience that your life isn't necessarily owned, that you're living life with others in a very public way. If you take your sweet time on the platform, climbing up those stairs or being wide on the escalator, you might make somebody else late. And you learn that the first time someone makes you late and you miss your train. We all walk around every day not thinking about anyone but ourselves. Some people call it personal freedom. I call it a disrespect for community and for humanity. And that leads me to just say this. The big lesson or takeaway from you learn that the world is bigger than you is that you also have to then make the experience what it is. You can hate riding the train every day if that's your attitude. But if you learn to love the train like I did, the first thing I do when I go back to Chicago is make sure that I make a train ride because I want to be able to have that experience. And so it makes it what it is. Right here in Fargo. Fargo is what you make it. We are a cold, north frozen tundra, and yet at the same time, it's an amazing place to live and be because we choose to make it that way. And that would be true of Chicago or any other city. You have to make it. Number two, my experience is not your experience. This was a key learning while riding the train. So you don't even have to be that astute, but after a couple of hours or 2 mornings on the train, you realize riding the Red Line that you can't just see the world from your own point of view. All around you in that living in public are people who are living completely different walks of life and different experiences. So there's that elderly woman, right? That's sitting there doing her crossword puzzle. There's the man experiencing homelessness who's just hanging out there, keeping warm for the day until the shelter opens. There's the well-dressed businessman just 2 seats down who's reading the newspaper on the way to his office. Fact of the matter is I don't know what any of those life stories are. I don't know why that person is experiencing homelessness. I don't know what that woman has seen in her many years of riding the train and her life in this city, or if all of her life was even in this city. I don't know if that man who looks like he has it all on the way to his office in his, $500, $600, $1,000 suit, I don't know if he's happy. I don't know if his partner left him that morning. I don't know. And so we have to think outside of ourselves. My experience is not somebody else's experience, and I think that we need to have empathy for one another and see things from other different points of view. I think one of the times that I really learned that my experience isn't everyone else's experience was one night, my friend Sarah, who's a jazz singer, was playing in the South Loop at a jazz club, and I got on the train, and it was later in the night when I normally would be on the train on my way home, and a guy sat down next to me, and I couldn't help but notice that he had an iguana on his head. It was just a real live iguana just hanging out and not causing anybody problem until security at one of the stations told him that he couldn't have the iguana on the train. But it was one of the first times sitting there and going, this guy's got a different life than myself. And it made me want to know what his life experience was, something outside of me. And my third learning that I'm going to share with you this morning from riding the train is to trust your journey. One of my dearest friends has a tattoo that says, trust your journey. Transit maps, this map right here in front of you, is not very detailed. It is not a topographical map. Everything on the map or everything in the city of Chicago is not represented here. If I were to point out you in North Chicago, the Morse stop that was my stop, and that I lived 2 blocks from that and what my neighborhood looked like, you don't get that from looking at this map. This map is simply full of touchstones, full of guides, full of reference points. When you emerge, the red line at one point goes down as it goes downtown, it goes underground. When it goes underground and then you get off at the North and Clybourne stop and you emerge from the escalator and you walk out and there's an Apple store and a CB2 and an REI and a bus station, you don't necessarily know where you are. You have to look around. Where am I in relationship to the Sears Tower and the Hancock Tower and the other landmarks around me? You don't know that just by looking at the North and Clybourne stop on the map. So you have to trust your journey, that we all have reference points in our lives. We all have information in our lives, and we need to be able to use what we've collected on our journey and also looking forward on maps like this to see where we're going, and you have to figure it out. I can't just get to the airport by looking at this map. I have to navigate it. I have to live it. And so that's where we come back to my journey. And why I'm standing here this morning, I guess, is instead of trusting my journey, I tried to force it. I tried to put what other people wanted for me or what I perceived was what I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to go. I had put a lot of pressure on myself of those things. Also, student loans and real life situations that said, no, I have to do what I've been doing. I have to save my life and stay in the church. So I made this new life in Chicago, and then I chose to do what everybody thought I should do, and I came back to Fargo. I took a call and an invitation to start a new church here in our community. And so that's what I did. I'll spare you the gory details, but let's just say that the city of Fargo and the church hierarchy were not necessarily ready for a very progressive, gay-friendly church that met mostly in bars and breweries. And let's just say that in the end, it didn't end well for me. And it turned out that my second chance on church ended up being my last. And so what it meant is that I had to trust my journey and go out on my own. Now, I had clearly collected a lot of stuff to have a map in front of me from my life, but I also knew that I didn't know what was on or off every stop of the way. And so this last turn, or the second chance of church, taught me that for a lot of my life, I had been on the wrong train. I thought I knew where I was going, but I was definitely on the wrong train. You see, one of the things that I learned about myself is that I wasn't a Christian. And that, by the way, is a real professional hazard when you're a Christian pastor. And so, therefore, I had to put to terms that I needed to get off at a station, stand on the platform, and double back on a different train. Trust the journey, not the one that is put before you, but the one that you find that's in yourself. And what I found is that I needed to live and be for good, for the good of the whole, for everyone on the map of the transit system. And so I speak to you today as an agnostic with a theological degree who used to be able to bless a communion table. And when I finally decided to trust the journey, I realized that while I had been looking always for a higher purpose to something outside of myself, that the purpose of my life was really actually with me the entire time. And that purpose, if I was to look out, when I was to look outside of myself, it was then found in community, in the people who were around me, who I was supposed to serve, if you will. And I thought I needed to do that through the church. It was the wrong vehicle for me for a variety of reasons. And now I've been able, because a friend one night over a beer at the Turf said, "Hey, I hear the local homeless coalition is looking for a project coordinator for a grant." And I said, community organizing, I got a bunch of other experience. Let me throw my hat in the ring. 6 years later, I stand before you today as the executive director of the Fargo-Moorhead Coalition to End Homelessness with a very clear purpose of ending homelessness. Because we as a society, we as a community created homelessness. No one individual creates homelessness. We created it as a community. And therefore, we as a community, if we have the political will, we know how to do it, and we can. We can change that narrative as well. And so today, I want to thank you all for coming to my therapy session that I've led you into. And I hope that you hear that you need to not be able to, that having other people put those pressures on you in life, or what you think you're supposed to do, or because you've already waded in hip deep or shoulder deep into something, that you can't get out. What I learned from riding the rails in Chicago was that the possibilities are endless, that the train system is a public service, and it is what we make of it. And I think here in this community, there are great things that we can do. We can build amazing social life. We can end homelessness. We can have a thriving business community. We can have an incredibly thriving art scene, but we have to make it happen. Thank you.